Hey guys, Dave from Wolfhard Hobbying here, and today we're going to continue looking at painting the Fulung Devourer. In this video, we're going to take a look at painting the spines along his back here, as well as more of the fleshy bits underneath his belly, his arms, his face, and things. So to get us started with the spikes, or any of the bones, we're going to come in with Zandri Dust and a little bit of Lamaine Medium, just to give us a nice smooth coverage over the spines. So just like with any base coating, just taking my brush here and going to give it a nice thin coat. Now this color does take 2 coats to get a nice good solid color, but that's with almost all paints. You want to do more than 1 coat if you want a good solid color. So just going along all these spines on his back, on both sides as well. And we're also going to hit the claws, and he's got these antlers or horns or whatever they are on his face. We're going to hit those as well with this base color here. Now I start with the Zandri Dust, as it is a nice dark beige, and it works really well with the highlights that we're going to come in with a little later on. But as simply as that, it's just do one side, you could do the other side. As these pieces are very thin, so you don't have to do a lot of work on them there. So as you can see here, getting his neck spines or spikes painted up here. So as you can see, it's easy as that, and then just going to get started on his, again, antlers or horns here. You could do these whatever color you wanted, but I wanted to go more natural. It's growing out of his head, it's part of his skeletal structure kind of look. But you could go with a brown, make it more like kind of like a forest dragon or something. It's all up to you, it's all personal preference, but as you can see here, I've already done one side, so it was just finishing off the next. And then he's got those tiny little spines there. So that's the first base coat of the Zandri Dust. So we're going to let that dry now, and we're going to get started on the fleshy parts of the model. So we're going to do like his arms, the underside of the body here, and there's a big fleshy part at the end of the tail. So I'm going to keep it in the same green color. So coming in with Scarsnick Green, this is going to be our base color here, as I wanted the underside to be a lot brighter than the scales, as I wanted the scales to be look a little thicker, as if it's armor or whatever. So just again, base coating it like I base coat everything, being very mindful of not hitting the scales here, as I don't want to have to do touch-ups later on. So just being very careful. Go over the entire fleshy bits underneath on his belly and everything like that. That's the color we're gonna go for. And along the tail here, I did paint those little spines at the end of the tail in the Zandri Dust, but it was a little hard to be very careful around there, and I want to get this base coat done. So I just painted over those spines. But just getting everywhere, a nice good base coat. This color too, it takes 2 coats to do as well. But that's it. So as you can see, his underside is going to be a lot brighter, which is what I wanted it to look like. And just getting up on his tail here. Got to be very careful because the scales are kind of weird on this guy. He's got really sporadic scales on the arms, on the tail part. The rest of the body's pretty good for a consistent amount of scales, but that light green really kind of separates the model, really shows off the scales as well too. And on a big centerpiece style model here, you want those little details to really pop, so that when it's on the tabletop, Anybody who's looking at it can see the separation in the scales. So just a little dab on his face there. His face is a lot of this facial beard or whatever the Oriental style dragons have. So there's not a lot of flesh on the face. So just setting him down here so that I can get an over top view of where the flesh is on the face. But he's got those ears and just doing his mouth here. And that's pretty much about it. We're going to let that dry up there. And then we're going to come in with our next step, which is going to be wash. We're going to come in with Bale Tan Green. It's a nice dark green. And it's going to be a fairly heavy wash, as I want to darken that Scarsnick green a bit. So it's not so vibrant and bright. So we're going to come in with a nice wash here. It's also going to allow us around the scales. The top scales, it's going to allow us to almost make a nice blend of a green transition, so it's not dark scales and then just bright flesh. So as you can see here, heavy load on the brush and just painting it into all the crevices. As this isn't really straight flesh, it's almost like folded skin. Or it could be scales. I'm not too sure the anatomy of this dragon, but just getting this nice green wash all over the place. You could go with a lighter green if you wanted to. It's all personal preference on how you want to do it, as I want to keep the theme of my Shale Han very green dragon, very almost in the jade spectrum, to just give it that feeling. So with that wash done, we are going to let this sit and dry, and as you can see, I put a little bit too much on it and it's kind of gotten on my workspace. But once it's dry, we're going to come back in with Scarsnick Green, and I'm going to show you two ways of doing this next step. The way I prefer is edge highlighting along these folds or overlapping scales, whatever they happen to be. So you can edge highlight, which really picks it out, and this is the method I like best, but this method does take a long time to do if you're going to hit every scale. Now I'm not going to go all the way to the bottom, I'm just going to kind of go just along the midsection there and just hit the edge, as there are little rips and breaks within these scales along the edges, so the edge highlight really picks those up, and as you can see here, gives that nice bright separation. And I also did the leg and the foot on that side. So to show you another way you could do it is you can come in with your dry brush and you can dry brush all these. I'm not a big fan of this method, as the highlight is very subtle and it doesn't give you a lot of pop from far away. But it's all personal preference. The dry brush method is a lot faster, as you can get a good chunk of the model done in a short amount of time. It also helps on the arms and legs here to pick up those muscle groups. And the face I chose to dry brush instead of the edge highlighting, just for the simple fact of it was more convenient at the time. But as you could see previously there, the highlight is very subtle. It's not as strong and vibrant as the edge highlighting. So I just wanted to show you guys two different methods of doing it. You can pick which way to go. It's up to you. It's personal preference. So with that done, we're now going to finish off the rest of the model. So I did put a second coat of the Xandri dust on the horns, the spines, and the claws. So we're going to come in here and we're going to give it a nice light wash of Agrax Earthshade there, just to darken the Xandri dust even more. So just like any other wash, be very careful that you don't pool it up too much. As you can see right here, I've put too much on the brush, so it's sitting there, and if you let it sit there and dry, you'll get that pooling effect, and it could also run off onto the model. So you just dry your brush there a little bit, and then it'll suck up the excess and just work it into the spines. This one here is just a tint. We're not looking at picking up too much detail in the spines, and just go all over the model with this wash. Do the feet, the horns, everything, and it darkens that Xandri dust to a nice little color. Now I didn't do the spines on the tail, as you don't want that bleeding into the green. It will really discolor it and make it look gross. So and with the teeth here, we're going to just put a nice little bit of wash. Not too worried about this becoming too dark, as it is his mouth. And if it becomes dark, whatever, it's not a big deal. You don't really see his mouth that much. So we're going to let this guy dry, and then we're going to come in with our highlight. Now, we're going to come in with Ushabti Bone for our highlight. This is going to be an edge highlight, and we're just going to pick the uppermost edges of everything that was painted in Xandri dust. So like right there where there's kind of that valley in his horn, we're going to leave that the dark Xandri dust. You can take this highlight as far as you want. I'm just hitting the tops of the horns. I do a little bit into the curve of the horn, just where light would hit. Just give it a nice separation. But we want to leave a lot of that darkened Xandri dust in the shadow areas to simulate the shadow and that where the light is hitting. So right here, as you can see, just getting the tops of the horn, that little bump. Anywhere light would hit is where I would put this color, but it's all up to you on how far you want to take this highlight. You could dry brush this as well, but I don't think you would get the same effect, but give it a try, and let me know if that's a better method for you, if you like it better. But I prefer this method, as it gives me a nice clean look to it. But just like that, as you can see, it's already starting to look a lot brighter. And for the spines, they're almost shaped like knives. So I'm kind of coming in and I'm going to hit it almost on a 45-degree angle on each side to give it that kind of bladed edge look, as that's the way I see these spines. But you could just go right along the edge and then work it up into the tip a little bit more, but that's again personal preference. So for the claws here, just going to come in with just along the peaks of the claws, leave that Xandri dust in the lower parts to simulate our shadow, and there you have it. Like that, for me, that looks great, and that's where I'm going to leave the highlights on the bone color. You could come in with a white and do another highlight at the higher peaks, but I don't really feel like that would be a good color, but that's up to you. So we just do that over the entirety of the model on the claws. In the next video, we're going to cover painting the saddle and his harness, and maybe some of the facial hair that he has. But that's it, guys. Thanks for watching the video. Give a like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Facebook at Wolfhard Hobbying. I do have a Patreon account. The link will be in the description below if you want to show some more support. Thanks, guys, and have yourselves a great day.